Our lives, for better or for worse, are greatly and highly defined and impacted by those we choose to associate with. Your life is going to look like the community in which you have planted your life. We need to be surrounded by godly community. Look back at verse 1. Happy is the man, or blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. Now, what the psalmist is doing here is he's using a negative example to teach a positive lesson. He's saying, don't surround yourself with ungodly community. And if you notice the verbs he uses there, standing and walking and sitting, these are words that describe the rhythms of life. In other words, he's talking about the way we live. He's saying, don't live in such a way that you surround yourself with ungodly, unbiblical influences. He's saying, don't be intertwined with. Don't be in a rhythm of life with those who would bring you down spiritually. That's not the path to blessing. And so the implication here, though, is that the opposite scenario is also true, right? So we know as we read scripture and as we study the Bible that the flip side of that coin is indeed very true. So the path to blessing is to surround ourselves with godly community. The path to blessing is to get intertwined, to do life with those who would build you up. So he's saying in the same way that you're to avoid walking with the wicked, standing with the sinners, sitting with the scoffers, what he's saying is, I want you to walk with the godly, right? I want you to sit with the saints. I want you to stand in the way of those that are living for God. He's saying we need to build godly community to the same degree that we should avoid ungodly community. We should actually seek out and intentionally pursue godly community. I love Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 24 and following. It says this, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and to good works. Watch this, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day drawing near. Hebrews is saying, as believers, we need to be together. Why? Because we build one another up. Because we encourage one another. We do life together in community, and that is the environment for flourishing. And so our lives, for better or for worse, are greatly and highly defined and impacted by those we choose to associate with, right? Your life is going to look like the community in which you have planted your life. I want you to stop and think about this for a moment right now at the outset of a new year. I want you to ponder who is your crowd for a moment this morning, because your crowd will impact your character. It's always true. Your crowd, it's a great message for young people, by the way. Your crowd will impact your character. Your circle will determine your spiritual ceiling. Your friends will largely define your focus in this new year. So let me ask you, who's your crowd? I want you to think about that for 2025. Who's your crowd? Who are you going to hang out with? Who are you going to sit with? Who are you going to walk with? Who are you going to intertwine your life with? Who are you going to do life together with this year? Who is your crowd? To be sitting with and walking with and standing with the godly is to be like that tree in the right environment for growth. It's just going to naturally flourish because it's positioned for growth by surrounding itself with good community. Listen, discipleship never happens in isolation. It doesn't. Discipleship, you weren't meant to grow. You can't grow alone. And I know in our Western context, we talk a lot about our personal, private, quiet time. And that's good. We're going to get to that. Like, yes, you need time with you and God, but you know what else you need? You need time with you and God and God's people. That's what the Bible says. You need to be surrounded. Discipleship is not a solo project. Spiritual formation does not happen in isolation. If you want to grow this year, it cannot happen without spiritual community. And as we read the New Testament, And as we study, for example, the book of Acts, you cannot miss the heavy, heavy theme of the plurality of the saints, of spiritual community on every page. And in the book of Acts and in the early church, it was never I, me, and mine. It was always we, us, and ours. That's the context of the early church. And it was never about the individual, but it was always about the group. It was about the saints. And so next Sunday, actually, we're going to begin a new series, a series that Pastor Robbie, our discipleship pastors, kind of brought to us. And it's going to be about getting plugged into spiritual community. And it's going to be about lifting one another up. And so the name of that series we're starting next Sunday is called The Lifted Life. And we're going to be studying in detail Acts chapter 2, verses 41 to 47. So I just want to read it together this morning, just as a preface. I'm not going to exposit this because we're going to do that over the next 4 weeks, but this is where we're going as we begin the new year, to talk about the lifted life. Listen to what life was like in the early church. Acts chapter 2 and verse 41, it says, so those who received his word, that's after Peter preaches, right? And preaches the gospel, they were baptized, and there were added that day about 3,000 souls. So you got this church is being born. People are being saved. Look at verse 42. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread and prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many signs and wonders were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together. Don't miss that word. They were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as anyone had a need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. That's the passage we're going to study over the next 4 Sundays, beginning next Sunday. And did you hear that word together? Over and over. And that word fellowship, that's the Greek word koinos. It means shared. It means belonging to one another. It means open and sharing in life. And so this is why we do community groups. We're going to talk a lot about this over the next few weeks. The reason as a church, a primary part of our strategy to grow people and to make disciples and to help people mature spiritually, a primary strategy for us is community group. We talk about it all the time. We want everybody in a group. Why? Because that's the right environment for flourishing. Being surrounded. It's what Psalm 1 is trying to say. And so isn't it amazing that in our church that we offer community groups and so that no one has an excuse for doing life alone. And let me just say, if you've been doing life alone, I got good news for you. You don't have to do that anymore. We have something called community group every Sunday. You don't have to do life alone. You can do life together with other believers. Isn't it a blessing that every week there's a time and a place that we can go to be together, to share life, to pray together, to laugh together, to cry together, to get together in our homes and share meals, to do mission together. This is the rhythm of life that God has designed for us. It's the environment for flourishing. You know, there's a line that I've often heard repeated over the years, and I've been in ministry 25 years, and I've often heard this line in Christian circles, and it's kind of a catchphrase that people use that they want to stay on the periphery of the church, right? They want to kind of be like, here's us, we're together, and they're just on the edge. Or it's often sort of a catchphrase when people leave a church, when they say, okay, yeah, I don't like this place, I'm going to move on and find another place. There's a line that I've heard, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. People will say, you know, I just couldn't find community. Have you heard that line? I just couldn't find community. Like it's a scavenger hunt, right? Like you missed the breadcrumb trail somehow, and you took a wrong turn, and I couldn't find community. And what I want to say back is, hold on, let me think about this. Have you tried community group? Right? Like we have a thing. Can you believe it? It's actually called community group. You can come and you can find community and you can plug in. And you can be encouraged. And I want to tell you, that's where life is. That's where blessing is. That's where health is. That's where flourishing is, as in community. And so I just hope that you feel this way in this church. Like, you don't have to look hard for community. You really don't. Like, and if you're struggling, and I'm not making light of that struggle, I'm really not. Like, isolation and loneliness, that is a hard thing. That is a real need. That is a hard struggle. And so if you're in that spot and you're like, man, I'm really struggling to plug in, hey, we don't judge you. We want to help you, actually. We've got a plan for that. We've got a path for that. We can take your hand and join it with a hand of others in a group, and you can do life together with others. That's a real need, and we want to meet that need in your life this year. And so let me ask you a question. How do you intend to surround yourself with godly community this year? Make a commitment to be known. Make a commitment to plug in deeply with others. And by the way, community doesn't happen just because you get together in a Sunday school room for an hour on Sunday morning. It doesn't happen automatically, right? It takes intentional investment. It takes calling somebody on the phone and say, hey, you want to grab lunch this week? You want to grab coffee this week? It takes inviting people to your home and going to the home of others and hey, we're going to go over here and volunteer and serve. Do you want to go with us? Let's go do it together. It takes that intentional action where we invest in those relationships that God has given around us, and then this beautiful community begins to grow. Or maybe you're here this year, and maybe you're just convicted in your spirit right now, and you know this is true, that you have spent the last few years of your life surrounded by the wrong community. And right now, when you hear the words of Psalm 1, you're like, yep, that's me. It's exactly where I've been. Let me say, if you're surrounded by the wrong crowd, you're never going to flourish. You're never going to flourish. If you yoke up with people who bring you down, and maybe they don't intentionally bring you down in like a derogatory kind of way, but just the life they live and the things that they believe in and what they value, it's not the path of life and goodness and flourishing. And if you're surrounded by those who bring you down, well, the outcome is going to be negative, right? The outcome is not going to be the flourishing that you're after. And so maybe for you, your New Year's first step is you know what? I need to make a break with some parts of my community. And right, not that you just like ghost people and, cast them off. I mean, you need to love them. You need to pray for them. You need to live missionally towards them, but maybe that's just not your community. It's not where you put down roots. It's not where you draw life. Are you with me? So if you want to be like that tree that's flourishing, number one, you have to be surrounded by godly community.